Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming to this morning's Eggs and Issues. Today we have representatives from the 35th District, position number 1, with us. We've got some great questions again today. We're going to go ahead and get started, but I have a few ground rules we have to take care of first. If you have a cell phone, please put it on silent or vibrate. If it goes off during the session, we ask that you give a $20 donation to the charity that I picked, and this week it's the Holly Ridge Center. And so we're not going to hunt you down or anything, but it's kind of on your honor. We did catch our moderator a couple weeks ago. His phone went off, and he had to make a donation to Kids at Rescue Mission. So we don't hunt you down, but we do expect you to do it. We had a schedule change. We've added one more event to our forum. On October 16th, we are going to do the yes and no sides to Initiative 1631. That is the Clean Air, Clean Energy, otherwise known as carbon tax initiative. So we'll be doing that on the 16th. We have people pro and con on that. Next week, we'll be doing the Kitsap County Auditor. That should be interesting. That's the gentleman that takes care of audits the county and also runs elections. So we'll have that. Format here is very simple. We start off with 3 minutes for each candidate to open up, tell us about themselves, their platform, how they got to where they are today. After that's done, we'll go into questions that have been provided by the audience. Each candidate will get 1 minute to answer the question, and then at the end of the session, we'll give each individual a 2-minute closing so that they can, again, ask for your vote, expand on a question they didn't have time to answer. One thing that we have added this year is the challenge card. You each have 2, a blue and a red one. The color is insignificant. It was just so that you can see them on the table. You get 2 challenges. If your opponent says something that you disagree with, raise the challenge card. I'll grab that. Once they make a statement, you'll have a minute on your challenge, and then your opponent will have a minute to respond. You only get 2 of those, so make sure you use them wisely. Okay, with nothing else to go on, we will start today with Dan. You have 3 minutes. Oh, I should tell you, there's a time limit. So at the 30-second mark of 3 minutes, the yellow paddle will go up. When your time is done, the red paddle will go up. If you continue to talk, I will get closer to you to close out. During the 1 minute, at the 10-second, and then during your 2 minute, the 20 second. Are we ready? All right. This is an easy one to start with. Oh, I'm sorry, I always do that.
No, it's okay.
I love these questions. Go ahead, Dan, 3 minutes.
Good morning, my name is Dan Griffey, State Representative in the 35th District, position number 1. Lifelong resident of the 35th District. I've spent my entire 47 years here. I'm a husband, father, grandfather, professional firefighter. I serve you as ranking member on local government. I serve on the Public Safety Committee, and I serve on the Early Learning Committees. My passion has been for making sure that we have proper land use zoning and an ability for our community to grow and thrive. But I was thrust into a issue set when I got to Olympia, and that is ending the statute of limitations on felony sex crimes so monsters like pedophiles have to look over their shoulders for the rest of their life. I was very proud this last year that I was also able to pass an amendment to the budget that's going to definitively and finish testing the non-tested sexual assault kits that we have on hand in Washington State. It gives us a robust forensic examination capacity at our WSP Crime Lab. It is an honor to serve you, and I'm once again asking for your vote. Thank you.
James, 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is James Thomas. I moved to Washington State about 15 years ago after starting my business in New Orleans. I own a manufacturing company that makes components and finished medical devices for the respiratory and anesthesia industries. As I became more involved in the community, I got involved with the Economic Development Council and have, in fact, chaired that council for 2 years. My term coming up at the end of also served on the Mason County Planning Advisory Commission and just completed in August my term as chair of that organization. I decided to run in this race because I look around the 35th and find that we lag behind the rest of the state and in fact the nation in unemployment, in median income, even in life expectancy. And yet I see wonderful assets in people, in timber, in seafood. I compared the 35th with Deschutes County, Oregon. Think then. 50 years ago, the 35th and Deschutes County looked an awful lot alike. Today, they look very, very different. And in fact, we have assets that Deschutes never had. Our proximity, for instance, to Seattle and King County. There's no reason at all that we shouldn't be the playground of Washington State. So with that, I ask you to give me an opportunity to earn your vote and look forward to engaging with you this morning.
Test.
Okay, James, you're first to go on this question.
All right.
You have 1 minute to answer. What qualifications do you have to do the job? What previous committees or commissions have you served on?
Well, I think I've addressed most of that. I have been a successful businessman for 20-odd years. In that capacity, I have traveled the world, lived on and off in China for a couple of years. I have an acute understanding of the issues facing our community in the 35th and the state of Washington as we move deeply into the 21st century. I'm very concerned about educational opportunities for our young people. China is in the process of running through their China 2025 program, where they intend the 2025 to be a dominant force in 10 major industries. I'm going to run out of time here. I ran the Economic Development Council full time. All right, and I'm done.
Sorry. All right, Dan, 1 minute.
So I currently serve, as I stated, on the Public Safety Committee, which as a professional firefighter is a natural fit for me. I serve on the Early Childhood Learning Committee, which I find is a natural fit also, because a lot of the issues that we deal with early learning and child wellness, I deal with in the field with them. I see what the issues that they go through. I see sometimes tragically the abuse that children go through, so it gives me insight. And I also serve on the local government committee, where I serve as the ranking member. And the local government committee is basically rules, regulations, and tax policy that your local jurisdictions can engage in. It is an honor to serve in those capacities, but before that, I served on, it's kind of a unique family dynamic. We were encouraged to argue politics at our dinner table, and it was expected that we did. And it was a prideful moment when we would be able to hold our own in a conversation with the adults, and we always were celebrating that. So I have a family that we were taught to give back, and give back as much as you can possibly give back. One of the great accomplishments is my dad was a port commissioner in the Port of Allen, and if any of you seen that wonderful waterfront park, that was my childhood job. My dad, on the weekends, I'd say, "Dad, what are we going to do?" And I knew the answer was always going to be, "We're going to work on the park." So we built with our bare hands the Allen Waterfront Park, and it's a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of that. You get the next question.
What is your vision for improving the 35th legislative district?
I have a very expansive vision. With my opponent points out the assets 35th has, and he is absolutely right. We have 3 national airports in the 35th district. We have a 4-lane highway in the 35th district. We have a rail network in the 35th district. What we need to do is change our zoning, and if we zone properly, the industry, commercial, and industrial will come. We have the assets. I have been working to change the growth management regulations so the 35th would zone in more creatively. I was able to pass a bill through a Senate version that would have changed the Growth Management Act with emphasis on rural economic development in the 35th district. The governor, however, vetoed that bill, so it was kind of disappointing to show up to a veto ceremony, but I can say I've done that in my career. We have all kinds of assets, and the vision of the growth in the 35th is strong.
Same question, James.
After having done a careful review with the EDC of the assets that we have here in the 35th, it became clear to me that we needed to focus on added value industries in timber, in seafood, and in tourism. Now, that's not to say that we don't want to attract every bit of manufacturing that we can get, and in fact, we've been working with the Port of Shelton on developing what we sort of grandly call an aerospace park. It's going to be a development for manufacturers of aircraft and air sports related products. I disagree with my opponent on the importance of changing zoning. I have great confidence in the Growth Management Act and think that I'm out of time.
Okay.
This one goes to you, James, to start. Do you support carbon tax? Why or why not?
I do not support the carbon tax because it is a regressive tax. It is going to be felt most deeply by those of us who live in rural areas and have to commute to our jobs. It certainly will have a heavier impact on the less economically advantaged, and therefore while I am strongly in favor of doing everything that we can do to protect our environment, the carbon tax is not, in my opinion, the way to go.
Same question.
I do not support the carbon tax for many reasons, but number one, the reason is it's going to do nothing to sequester carbon in the 35th district. So it's a tax on industry that will do nothing to sequester carbon. However, I have proposed bills that would do that. The proper recognition of hydroelectric power as renewable in the state of Washington is absolutely essential for us to decarbon our power grid. Platooning of trucks in Washington state. Every other state around us allows triples. We can reduce the price of shipping or cost of shipping, and we can reduce the idle time that our trucks have on the borders of Washington state, rebuilding their loads down to 2 trailers. If we allow triples in Washington state, and if the trucking industry is talking about a significant carbon reduction, there is a lot of things we can do to reduce carbon and reduce costs in Washington state, and I'll support those policies. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, this goes to you first. If any, what new taxes would you support, and what should that new funding accomplish?
At this point in time, I don't support any new taxes. If you look at the growth just in the short time that I've been in Olympia, when I first started in Olympia, our budget was somewhere in the neighborhood of $36 billion, and currently it's almost $54 billion. That growth, there was some small revenue generating changes in Washington State with changing, the governor has vetoed a couple of the tax exemptions that some of our businesses, like manufacturing, enjoy. Primarily, all that money was the good, hard work of the good citizens of Washington State. That's a lot of money. We can live within our means, and at this point in time, we do not need any new taxes. Thank you.
Same question, James.
We live in communities. The 35th is a community, the state of Washington is a community. The way that communities organize themselves to address common problems and to pursue common goals is through government. And the way that we pay for that is through taxes. My personal feeling is that we should do away with the sales tax in the state of Washington and move to an income tax, a graduated income tax that is progressive. And I think that that would go a long way towards solving lingering problems in education. Oh, I know this is, I see thumbs pointing down. I know that this is not a particularly popular proposal, but I think that it addresses the important needs of equalizing the load on the citizens of Washington State.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is to you, James. Sticking with taxes, should the share of pot taxes that are going to the cities and counties be increased to support school resource officers in all schools?
Absolutely. I am deeply concerned about the funding mechanisms, especially for counties in Washington State. They have limited opportunities to increase their revenue streams and increasing demands for services. So yes, I would strongly approve of that.
Yes, we need to increase the share, and not just for school resource officers. We did the numbers on it, and I sponsored an amendment to the budget to put a school resource officer in every classroom in the state of Washington. It's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $400 million. So it's not the revenues from cannabis is not even going to come close to touch it. So we got to be careful when we talk about having a dedicated fund to actually do it. It wouldn't even come close to paying for all of it. However, I am committed with the revenue, the increase that we have is putting a school resource officer in every classroom, I mean not classroom, every school in the state of Washington, so they can act as that first line interference to these terrible activities that we've been having in schools. Thank you.
Okay, starting with you, Dan. Do you support a mandatory road use charge paid by the mile? Why or why not?
I do not support vehicle miles traveled. It is only going to hurt the rural communities. We don't have as many transit options as they do up in King County. And when you look at the fact that we got to drive 40 minutes or 50 minutes to go to a Costco or to a lumber store, that sort of thing, the vehicle miles travel tax will injure our citizens. I will not support it, and I will fight actively against it.
My position is very similar to my opponents. I absolutely am opposed to the mileage tax. It is terribly regressive, and again, as Dan noted, it would be an excessive burden on rural communities.
Okay, James. What will you do about Olympia not fully funding legal services and costing county taxpayers significant expenses in covering the difference?
Beyond jawboning, I'm not sure that there's a lot that I can do. This is a problem within the city of Olympia, and as a state representative, I certainly would use the influence that I have to have the city fathers and mothers address that, but I don't know what else I could do.
I have supported a bill for the entire 4 years that I've been in Olympia to make sure that indigent defense fund was fully funded for our local jurisdictions, and will continue to do so. I believe we will make significant progress on that. Will we get to 100% whole? I don't think so this year, but I think we're going to get very close, 70–80% whole. That's our job. When we find a unfunded mandate, we need to build coalitions of folks in Olympia to make sure that we actually fund that unfunded mandate, and we'll get it done. A lot of people don't understand, but this was a trade that what we're currently doing, 100% of the burden in the 60s was on local government, and the state came in and started picking up the burden. And I just like to point out that it used to be 100% burden, now we pick up about 70%. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. What will you do for Kitsap County while serving in Olympia?
I've done massive amounts for Kitsap County, from Holly Ridge renewal and revamping to the traffic congestion relief that we looked at in the Gorst area, where we added an extra lane. We're going to have to do a lot more in the Gorst area. We might even have to consider an over-the-hill bypass. But I'd like to talk about having monsters that, like pedophiles, have to look over their shoulders for the rest of their life. I think is a very good thing for all citizens, and especially the citizens in the 35th District. I just think it's time that we end the statute of limitations on felony sex crimes. We knuckle down and we really figure out our transportation solutions. And I have quite a few ideas I've discussed with most members of the people that have been in this room about how we could, for very little money, improve our congestion through the Gorst corridor. And my time is up. Thank you.
Kitsap County has huge growth opportunities, especially given the rising cost of residing in King County. To accomplish that, we are going, though, to have to do something about transportation, and I would make that a primary focus. I would also spend a good deal of time and resources trying to foster business opportunities here in Kitsap County. Pulling some of those jobs away from King, where the cost of doing business is increasingly becoming unattainable for small businesses.
Okay, James. Mike. Olympia has mandated same-day voter registration and additional ballot boxes. How will Olympia fund these mandates without putting a burden on local governments?
I don't know.
Okay. Any question, Dan?
So we passed the Voter Registration Act. I didn't support it because I believe that it put an undue burden on our local county officials' hands. We should have same-day voting. It should be like a 7-day window where you have 7 days before the election. We found that if we moved it to around 7 days, that the burden locally was significantly less. And we should expect from the electorate a little bit of responsibility, and that responsibility is you got 7 days before the election that you could register would significantly reduce the cost. We did in the bill that mandated the extra drop boxes. We paid for the actual physical drop boxes. We just didn't pay for how are you going to install them and set them up. So thank you.
Okay. What is the biggest barrier to affordable housing, and how would you address it?
So this is a multifaceted answer, and a multifaceted problem. But land inventory, or low cost, intrinsically low cost land is at a premium right now. We continue in Washington State to try to put low-cost housing on the most expensive land in the state of Washington, and that is downtown Seattle. That is the absolute most expensive. And I'm working on policies where we can do rural, what I call rural densification. So instead of having 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 as the norm, we can start putting multifamily living units in areas. I support tiny homes as an option, so you know, people can use it as a start under the homeownership ladder. These homes that I envision will be on foundations. They'll be very aesthetically pleasing from the exterior. They'll be intrinsically low cost. Thank you.
We certainly need to build affordable housing in rural parts of Washington. My opponent has proposed, I believe, in the last session, a bill to allow manufactured housing settlements to be created outside of urban growth areas. And I want you to know that I strongly oppose that idea. We have urban growth areas for a reason, and that reason is to best serve those communities with water, sewer, public transportation. When you move neighborhoods into fully rural settings, it becomes very difficult to do that, and it then impacts things like water quality. I'm running out of time here, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, next question. What will you do to ensure that Washington State residents have access to affordable and comprehensive health care?
This is a hot button issue for me. I will tell you that our OECD competitors all have some variant of universal care. We are the only holdout, and yet we spend 60–70% more than our OECD competitors do for health care, and in doing that, have no better outcomes. Now, I've been asked, well, how can we possibly pay for that? Well, I'm going to tell you. Everybody else seems to do it at a heck of a lot lower cost than we do. Are we saying then that Americans are too stupid to figure out how to do this? I don't think so. So, while universal care is a national problem that we're not going to fix,
The major cost driver in health, the delivery of health care in Washington State is the insurance industry, and let's just make that straight. The insurance industry is the cost driver. What we have to do is open our borders and allow for cross-strait competition to increase competition for our healthcare dollars. And at this point in time, we have really 3 providers in the state of Washington that just rebundle all of the healthcare services in Washington State, healthcare options in Washington State. That is too little. We need some free market competition to put pressures on driving them down. We also have more mandates on what health insurance shall be in Washington than any other state by far. So having the option to shop across state borders would lower the cost of our health insurance. Thank you.
Okay, school funding. What is your understanding of the recent reason for the teacher strikes around the state? What will you do in the legislation to fix the problems?
The teachers struck for higher wages than they negotiated with the legislature to get. The McCleary fix raised the entry-level salary of teachers to $45,000. The recent strikes and recent negotiations further raised that to about $52,000 is now average, so they wanted more pay. There's 2 issues here, and if you weren't in Olympia, it's hard to understand both of them, but there was the McCleary decision fix, and then there was the fix to McCleary. I did not support the fix to McCleary because the fix to McCleary absolutely left rural schools out in the lurch. The governor's veto of the Tri-Day solution left our rural districts in a competitive disadvantage. I'm going to continue to work to make sure that we level the playing fields. And regionalization was a ridiculous compromise that the majority party came up with in the end. And basically, regionalization is talking about how much the cost difference it is to live in King County versus, say, out here in Kansas, Mason County.
Same question.
It disturbs me that, that while our state constitution says that the number one job of the state is to provide a quality education for its kids, that we needed the Supreme Court to get the legislature to do its job. That said, the McCleary fix is a much better funding situation than we had before, but I certainly agree with my opponent that it is not ideal. One of the things that I would propose to equalize the playing field is something akin to the luxury tax that is used in many professional sports, where school districts that are relatively wealthy, think Issaquah, are forced to pool some of their funds to be distributed to school districts that are not so fortunate.
Okay, sticking with the McCleary fix, should Olympia be fully responsible for the costs of education and transportation of special needs students under the McCleary fix?
Yes. There's really nothing more to be said.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we should, and we're not funding fully, and quite frankly, the funding formula is too complicated and it needs to be streamlined. We have special needs children that can take up to $150,000 a year in specialized equipment just so they can go to school. So we're not there yet. We will get there. Thank you.
Okay. What will you do about the what will you do about the numerous unfunded mandates that are costing school districts, counties, and cities